Howdy, y'all. I'm Susana, and welcome to the Susana Gibb Show, where everything is bigger in Texas. Although it'd be nice if our carbon footprint were just a smidge smaller. And now I know what you're thinking. Texas is the land of oil rigs, big trucks, and barbecue. A state so red, it practically glows in the dark. And here we are, sipping on organic kombucha, talking about going green with Isabel Melgarejo, a climatologist. Ain't that a Texas-sized irony? So, grab your reusable water bottles and settle in because I'm about to ask some dumb questions that you've always wanted to ask but felt like maybe they were just too dumb. But before we do that, a quick word from our sponsor, Gibb Insurance Services. Are you tired of life's little surprises? Like finding out your roof doubles as a swimming pool during a Texas thunderstorm? Well, buckle up because we've got a policy for that. Whether it's home, auto, or that boat you'll swear you'll take out more than 2 times a year, we've got you covered. Go to gibbagencydallas.com for all your insurance needs. Gibb Insurance Services, protecting your piece of Texas, one policy at a time. And stick around to the end for our insurance tip of the week. Lastly, our fabulous listeners, if you've made it this far into the show, you must like what you hear, or you're just too polite to say otherwise. Either way, we would love if you would go and give us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your reviews help other amazing people like you find us, and they give us all the warm, fuzzy feels. Kind of like finding your favorite barbecue spot has a secret menu. Hopefully you knew about that. So drop us a line, share some love, and let the world know what you think. And now it's time. Hopefully you have your favorite beverage to sip on. I'm going to give mine a sip, and I've never had it before, so I'm scared. Okay. We're on with the show. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
I'm Isabel Melgarejo, and I'm a sustainability practitioner. So I help reduce carbon emissions, which are responsible for climate change. And in my free time, I also help caregivers navigate their journeys.
What do you say to people when they're like, climate change is fake, Isabel? That's garbage.
Well, it is true that there is a component that is just the planet. If there is a
So
volcano
it's nothing that
eruption.
we're doing. It is just the planet, right? Like there's that part.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
well, it is just the planet. And what I usually say to these kind of people is like, well, I respect your point of view. And also, we have been responsible for damaging the environment. Like, we are building houses, we are building all of this infrastructure for our benefit. And the other side of the coin of having all of these amazing things in life is that we're destroying habitat.
Right.
How do you think that affects animals and plants that live in that space?
Gosh, during COVID, do you remember what that looked like?
Oh, so quiet.
It was, well, but it was also like going down 75 with all the pink yucca plants in the center. They were the most beautiful they'd ever been because people weren't
Hmm.
zipping by all the time. All the animals that came out because people
Yeah,
were in their homes during COVID. Why do you think that people are so like they don't want to think about climate change?
I think it's the problem is so big, and I think it's just easy for all of us to forget that it's there. I think it's easier just to think like, well, if I don't pay attention to this, I don't have to think about this huge problem that I won't be able to solve. And one of the things that I've noticed, even with very conscious people, like people that are always thinking about the right thing to do for the environment, even them, when you really talk about the impacts, it's there are so many layers one on top of another that it gets very overwhelming.
Well, I'm reusing my water glasses and trying not to use plastic bottles because that's at least something, right? But to your point, like it doesn't feel like it's enough, right? Like I'm like, okay, so I
Mhm.
don't have this one water bottle this time. What does it matter? How, I'm just one person. So that makes a lot of sense. What do you say is greenwashing? How do you describe greenwashing?
It's like dieting. Um,
Okay.
so you go to the store and they sell this sugar-free cookie, but
Okay.
it still has tons of calories because it was made with processed food or whatever. So that is greenwashing. When you are saying that you are doing the right thing, but you're still like contaminating a lot, or
Mm.
your processes are not that clean, or um so
Like I'm doing the water bottle thing on this side, and then on the flip side, I'm using a bunch of pesticides on my lawn. Or,
exactly, yeah.
right. Or I drive everywhere. I literally park at one part of the parking lot to go in this store. And then because the other store I want to go to is on the other side of the parking lot, I move my dumb car across to the other side so I don't have to walk.
Yeah, and those,
Totally
imagine
guilty.
those impacts. The Texas heat is horrible. Like, seriously, when it is 100 degrees,
Yeah, it is terrible. It
if
is
it was in
terrible.
the 70s, you would happily walk everywhere.
Maybe. I remember I was with a New Yorker and they were horrified once. They were like, "You're going to move your car?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm going to have all these packages, I got to move it to the other side." Do people ever get mad at you when you talk about climate change? Like, I think people get really passionate about it.
So I think there's two types of people. So the tree hugger is going to be this person that goes all the way and is going to blame you for everything you do. If you're eating a steak, how dare you? And if you're driving your car from one part of the parking lot to another, like, are you crazy?
Right.
And then there's the people that are the rest of the people. And I consider myself a very pragmatic person. We can do very good in some areas, and then in others, we just forget about being conscious about it.
Hmm.
So I can be someone who's consistently thinking about how to reduce my waste streams. So everything, like, I think of something, for example, like removing your makeup. And instead of using the cotton pads, you use um the bamboo ones that you wash them. So you already reduce a lot of waste. And there are a lot of things that you can be very creative and just look around on the internet and what are the alternatives. But there's always something that just goes the other way. We can't be
Hmm.
perfect, and some things give to another. So you can be very conscious about waste, but then maybe you're using a lot of chemicals, or you're increasing um, your energy, or consuming more water. I don't know. There's like all these balances with so many things in life that getting everything right is super hard.
So you talked about, I always wonder this too, because I'm like, okay, I'm diligent. Let's go back to your bamboo face cloth versus using the cotton swab, which I'm like, okay, apparently I can do that. I can get something that's reusable. Where's the balance though? Because now I'm washing something and I'm using water to clean something. How do you find the balance of like I'm putting something in the recycling and I'm rinsing it out to go into the recycling. So in the meantime, I'm using a bunch of water for this thing that I hope is being recycled, but may just be sitting on a ship in the middle of the ocean because they're not recycling anymore. Because I
The
guess
thing, yeah,
that's the fatigue of it, right? You're like, oh, I can't make a difference, so why even try?
This is, yeah, I've been asked this question a lot, like, how do you know? And the truth is, we don't know. What I can tell you is that for every cotton pad that was produced, you used, you personally used zero water. You just trashed it. Like you
Hmm.
put makeup remover, cleaned your face, and trashed it. What I can tell you is that before it got to you, there were lots of processes. Cotton is an industry that uses lots and lots of water.
Hmm.
So you're you're using a lot of water, you're using pesticides to grow the cotton, and you used a lot of energy and you move those pads from a farm, a cotton farm, and then someone weave the cotton, and then someone made it round for you and package, and then it was distributed. So
And I
all
used
of
it for
that
three
is
seconds
behind.
and threw it away.
Yeah. So, and that happens with the bamboo thing as well. And yes, you're washing it, but the amount of water that you're using to wash it is way less than all of the water in the rest of the supply chain.
Do you remember? I feel like I saw this once because you said it, how much, because cotton does need a lot of water to grow. It's like one pair of jeans is something like 50 gallons of water. Is
I
that,
don't know the exact numbers,
but
but
it's a
yeah.
lot, right? Because they were like, hey, hang on to your jeans, right? Like, don't buy a ton of jeans that you don't need extra. Do you, besides the bamboo washing, do you have any other things that you're like, these are easy things that you can do at home to make subtle changes?
One of the things that I really like are these sheets for the washing machine. So instead of buying the huge bag of um, Tide or whatever you
Oh God, it
use,
comes in this terrible giganto plastic thing that you can't ever use again. You just are stuck with it. Yeah.
yeah, and then you buy it at Costco, so it's like even bigger. So you buy a little box and it brings sheets. They are not using water, it's like dry soap. And you
Interesting.
drop this sheet in the washing machine and it washes your clothes. A lot of the things that I usually recommend is going through all of your cleaning products because all of those chemicals can be very damaging to the environment and even for you. Like, I don't know if it had ever happened to you that you're cleaning and you're like, oh,
Yeah, I got to
I'm
step
getting
out for
high
a second.
here.
Yeah. Do you have a
Um,
brand that you're like, this brand is good? Stick with this brand?
Vinegar, whatever
Vinegar.
brand you want. And
Yeah.
then you can use like lavender drops or whatever scent
And the
you.
essential oils in it. Does it
Yeah.
actually cover up the I mean, I know we actually use vinegar and I know the smell goes away, even though my kids are all like, oh God, that smell is terrible. I'm like, just give it a second and it goes away. But I've never thought to put essential oils in it. Will the essential oil smell stick around or is it just kind of to get
Well,
through the vinegar port?
if eventually it will fade away.
Well, right, but it doesn't fade as fast as the vinegar smell.
I've never paid attention to that.
All right, I'll try it. Okay. So
You
vinegar,
can time that.
so vinegar, the laundry sheets, the bamboo. Do you have any other little tips or tricks that you can share?
Everything that you just use and trash. Um,
Use and trash.
Napkins, for example. And to be honest, I really like having a cloth napkin.
Yeah, cloth napkins. And that's still better. Even though we're washing the cloth napkins, that's still better use
Yeah,
of the
than
water
using
than the paper towels.
and paper, like the paper towels that you use to clean all of the kitchen. You can there's so many brands of clothes that you can use to clean your countertops and whatnot. I have like all these kinds of clothes all over.
Ooh, I feel like we need a list, Isabel, of Isabel's top 10, and I'll put it on our website. Isabel's top 10 things that you can have around the house, and we'll make some Amazon links of stuff where people can
Of
buy. That
course.
would be good. That would be
Yeah,
super
let's
fun.
do that.
Okay. So the other thing, I was on, I have some dumb questions for you. Are you ready? I found them online. And so this one, I've heard that cow farts are a big deal for climate change. Cow farting. Yes. Should we all switch to a plant-based diet for the sake of the ozone layer?
So the cow farts are not responsible for the ozone layer. Cow farts are basically carbon dioxide. Um, so if you're worried about that, probably the best thing would do to plant a tree or several. That is a good way of thinking it that way. So what happens with the cow farts is that
Which is methane gas, right?
it's methane and carbon dioxide and a bunch
Okay.
of gases. So these gases, they work as a blanket. So if you go to sleep and you put a blanket,
Mm-hmm.
you sleep very comfortably. But if you
Mm-hmm.
put a lot of blankets, it gets really hot. So that's exactly what happens with climate change. We're putting these gases that absorb the heat from the sun, and instead of, they are good in if you only put one blanket, because you keep the temperature nice and cozy. But when you put a lot of blankets on top of you, then you're very uncomfortable. And that's what's happening with climate change, is that we have all of these layers of different gases, methane and carbon dioxide, water vapor, and there are a lot of gases that contribute to that work as a blanket. So instead of radiating the heat back to the universe, we're keeping all that heat on Earth. So that's why the temperatures are rising.
Got it. So, what is the issue? I've heard, another dumb one. I've heard that driving an electric car can save the planet. But does that mean I should stop using my toaster to reduce emissions too?
Well, you can do both.
But there is a thing, right? Like I read not too long ago that if everybody in Texas switched to an electronic car, we would not be able to support all the batteries. Like sometimes that can be bad for the environment. Or is that wrong?
Again, it's terms of balance. So you have these huge batteries that need to be recycled or treated after your car battery is, when the life is over.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, researchers are working on ways to figure out how to recycle those batteries, because EV cars are very new, so we don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
So it's just a balance of knowing what to do with all these materials and these batteries. So instead of dropping these batteries into a landfill, we're using them and giving them a second chance in
Second
life.
chance. I was on set once and one of the producers was saying, he was talking to some younger actors and I was getting my makeup done and I could hear him and he was like, listen, it's not so much about climate change. It's really just about if it's an animal's time to die, right? It's their time to die. Like we shouldn't have to have these protected animals or anything like that. This is kind of like natural selection. And I kind of turned around. I was like, seriously, why not just let the polar bears die? Like, who cares about polar bears? And he kind of looked at me and I wasn't disagreeing with him. I was totally being a smartass. I was, but I didn't sound like I was being a smartass. I sounded like I was agreeing with him. And you could see in his head, like, I can't tell if she's being serious. Also, I kind of like polar bears. I don't necessarily want polar bears to go away. And it's interesting, people's feelings on, well, this is all just animals. But then when you confront them specifically, they're like, oh, well, yeah, I kind of like that polar bear.
And it
But
is funny that a lot of the endangered species that we know about are these big, beautiful animals,
Hmm.
but we're not thinking about the frog or the spider.
Mm, no, I don't think much about spiders. At least I try not to. I do like them, but yeah, I mean, they're affected too, right? One of the
Yeah.
other dumb questions that I got was, well, if the polar bears are in trouble, what about the penguins? Why don't we just move the polar bears to where they can be with the penguins?
They live in different parts of the world.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I was like, what are you people thinking? You kid, the polar bears and the penguins are on opposite sides of the earth. You can't, it just doesn't work. I know you're like, what are these people doing? You're like, Isabel's like, where are these people coming from that they want to give polar bears and penguins the same thing? How do you manage like the dumb stuff that people come up with? Because every dumb thing that I've posed to you, you literally have this look of like, okay, okay. Like, I'm going to be patient for this. Like, this is stupid in my head, but I'm going to not treat it like it's a stupid question.
Well, I think we all went through a stupid phase in our lives. Like, how do you add one plus one? How do you write the letter A? How do you walk? And we've all learned. So I'm pretty sure you know, like, if I were to become an actress, like, or if I were to sell a policy, I wouldn't know a thing about it. And I would be making these dumb questions to you. So I don't think they're dumb questions. It's just about a matter of do you know or you don't. And
Mm.
if you don't, if you're curious, that's, I think, great because you're opening conversations and you're learning. And if you learn whatever you learn, I think it's awesome.
I bet you're a good teacher for this because you're very patient, a
I'm
patient
not, but
educator.
if they're
So I know.
adults, yes, but if they're kids, no.
So before we wrap this up, tell us a little bit about what your other business that you have started. What is that you're doing? Which is very different from this, although does require another level of patience and education.
So I help family caregivers plan their care for their loved ones. And I started this out of my personal journey. I became a caregiver all of a sudden. So, and as I became a caregiver after my dad passed away, and everything was a mess in my mom's and my life. Everything was a mess. She was not cooking, she was not going grocery shopping. So, at the age of 20, I became like, I was still living with my parents then. And it was like, okay, I guess now I'm responsible for cooking and going grocery shopping. And I guess I'm also responsible for paying the bills because otherwise they're not going to get paid. And 5 years ago, I moved to Texas and it was like all over again. I noticed that my mom would start calling me and she would ask me like all of these questions like, hey, can you help me get Netflix again because I lost it? And hey, can you help me with these, like, whatever it was? And I was like, I'm not even close to you. And all of these things that I would do because I was living close to you, now I can't do them. And I started thinking like, well, if this is right now, what's going to happen in the future? So I created a program helping caregivers figure out that for themselves, the same way as I did it for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, and this even extends into how to talk to them about nursing home care, how to move them into how to find a nursing home, how to balance your life, how to deal with doctors, right? So you
Yeah,
are really trying to be that caregiver support when they're like, I don't know what to do next. And you're like, hello, pick me.
I know what to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the things that I learned in in sustainability, like how to run a project, I translated that knowledge into this other side of the business. I know how to run a project in sustainability, and that knowledge is transferable. Um, and I learned how to have difficult conversations, because sometimes you face people like, hey, I don't believe in this, or you're talking with diplomats or policymakers and they don't agree. So you have to learn to have those conversations. And
A
that
logical
skill,
conversation in a non-emotional way, even though these are emotional conversations. Hey, my mom can't drive anymore. How do I talk to her about taking her keys away?
yeah, and that's a conversation that if you learn how to do it in a setting, you can transfer that skill.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, if people want to find you, Miss Isabel, how do they find you?
They can email me.
Okay.
I have a website for climate change. I have a website for the other side business,
Oh, will you
helping
give out your
family.
websites?
Of course.
Yeah.
And I can be found in LinkedIn as well.
Okay. What's your website address?
TUMCOEUR.com.
Okay.
So Tumacool
We
for
will put
heart
that.
in French.
Oh. Well, we will put those links in there as well so people can find you. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today and handling my dumb climate questions.
And
And
they were great.
why, thanks. I'm going to hit stop, but don't go anywhere.
Awesome.
Our insurance tip of the week. If you're in process with a claim, don't be shocked if that first check that comes in is more of a starter pack than a full payout. A lot of people cash that check and they never get around to making the repair, like they're fine with half a roof and some duct tape. But here's the thing. Negotiating with your insurance adjuster is unlike negotiating with your toddler, trying to talk them into going to bed. Adjusters actually listen and take notes. And as long as you bring in estimates and facts, it's good. There's often additional costs once you begin the claim anyway, and so payments are reconciled at the end. So don't worry. Unlike your toddler, this bedtime story can have a happy ending, not just tears and a tantrum. Thank you again for spending time with us. We appreciate that you chose to listen to our little podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you in